There it is, that little glowing symbol on your dashboard, the check engine light. It's so vague, it's always a little worrying, and it usually means a trip to the mechanic. But what if, this time, it didn't have to? Let's demystify one of the most common codes you'll see on a Ford and figure out exactly what's going on. So, if you've plugged in your scanner and it's flashing the code P0456, you are definitely not alone. This is an incredibly common issue, and the good news is it often has a surprisingly simple and cheap solution. We're going to break down what this code is, what causes it, and how you might actually be able to fix it yourself in just a few minutes. All right, so what is your car's computer actually trying to tell you with this code? The official name can sound a little intimidating, but the key word to remember here is small. And I mean very small. Okay, here's the official jargon. P0456 stands for Evaporative Emission System Small Leak Detected. In plain English, it just means your car ran a self-test on its emission system and found a tiny leak somewhere. So take a breath. It's not a major engine problem. It's an issue with how your car handles gasoline vapors. And to really put this small leak into perspective, the system has detected a hole that's just 0.02 of an inch in diameter. That is literally the size of a pinhole. So yeah, it's enough to trigger the light, but we are not talking about some massive, dangerous fuel leak here. Now, to understand the leak, we first have to understand the system it's coming from. It's called the Evaporative Emission Control System, or for short, the EVAP system. The easiest way to think of it is like your car's own high-tech vapor trap. Its job is actually pretty simple, but it's really crucial. You see, gasoline naturally creates vapor inside your fuel tank. Now, instead of just letting those polluting fumes escape into the atmosphere, the EVAP system captures them. It holds onto them, and then, once the engine is running, it feeds them right into the engine to be burned off cleanly with the rest of the fuel. Pretty smart, right? So here's the journey those vapors take. First, they form in the gas tank. From there, they get stored in a little box full of activated charcoal called a charcoal canister. Then, when the time is right, a part called the purge valve opens up and the engine's vacuum sucks the vapors in to be burned. The whole thing has to be sealed completely airtight for this to work, and that's the key. Even a tiny leak can throw the whole process off. So, where is this pinhole-sized leak hiding? Before you start imagining complicated and expensive repairs, let's talk about the absolute #1 most common culprit. And here is probably the best news you're going to hear all day. More often than not, the fix for P0456 code costs basically nothing and takes, about 10 seconds to do. It is absolutely the first thing you should always check. Yep, it's almost always the gas cap. It's a critical seal for the EVAP system. If it's not tightened until it clicks, or if that little rubber seal is old and cracked, or maybe it's just plain missing, the system can't hold pressure. For you Fords with that easy fuel capless system, just make sure the little flap in there is clean and sealing properly. Any of these things will trigger that code. So your first step is super simple. Go check that cap. Okay, but what if you've checked, tightened, or maybe you even replaced your gas cap, and that pesky check engine light comes right back on? Well, then it's time to look a little deeper at the other components in the system. So if it's not the cap, the leak could be in a few other places. Over time, the rubber evap hoses can get brittle and crack. You've also got a couple of valves, the purge valve and the vent valve, that can get stuck or fail to seal all the way. Even the plastic housing on the charcoal canister can develop a tiny hairline crack. It's less common, but a faulty pressure sensor could even be sending bad information. All right, so with all these possibilities in mind, what's your game plan? How do you go from seeing that light on your dash to finding the solution? Well, it really comes down to knowing what you can check yourself versus when it's time to bring in the big guns. So here's the breakdown. You can absolutely do a visual inspection. Check your gas cap seal. You can trace the evap hoses you can see under the hood or near the gas tank. You're just looking for anything that seems obviously cracked or disconnected or just worn out. A mechanic, on the other hand, has a secret weapon for this job: a smoke machine. A smoke test is actually a really clever diagnostic. A machine gently pumps a harmless, visible vapor, it's basically smoke, into the evap system. And since the whole system is supposed to be sealed, any little bit of vapor that escapes instantly shows you exactly where the leak is. It turns finding an invisible, pinhole-sized problem into a super simple visual task. So let's put this all together. Here is your clear, step-by-step action plan. Number 1, start with the gas cap. It's the easiest and most likely culprit. Make sure it's on tight and the seal looks good. 2. Do a quick visual check of any hoses you can easily see. 3. If that light is still on, it's time to find a pro for a smoke test. 4. Once they find the leak, you just replace the bad part. And finally, number 5, clear the code, take it for a drive, and make sure the fix is complete. So the next time that check engine light comes on and your scanner reads P0456, don't panic. Before you even think about calling the shop, just walk to the back of your car. Because you really have to ask yourself, is taking 5 minutes to check your gas cap worth potentially saving yourself the time, the money, and the hassle of a trip to the mechanic? I think we both know the answer is almost always a resounding yes.